Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here, seriously. I am indeed the first Chief Executive of the UK's Geospatial Commission, and Jack asked me to spend 20 to 25 minutes just giving you some highlights as to why are we here? Why has the UK government established a Geospatial Commission? So I'll spend a bit of time giving you the background for that. I'm going to walk around a bit to keep the jet lag at bay, so hopefully the cameras are picking me up. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the goals and objectives, and then how are we doing. And I've just been in this role 9 months. It feels longer in a positive way, but it feels longer. And we have done some really interesting things. And one of the reasons for being here today in this conference is to listen and learn to you. So that's an open plea from me to you. I'm going to end with some contact details, and I expect a couple of thousand emails from the audience in the next week or so. So don't be shy, get in touch with us in the UK. Let me start by giving you just some thoughts on what's the UK landscape right here, right now. And, you know, I could probably change the UK to the USA to some degree. You know, we're living in interesting times. That's a British word meaning chaos. I don't know if this is going back to my colleagues in government, hopefully not. But it is really interesting. Like Jack, I'm an optimist about what data and digital can do and can deliver. But as you can see, and as you know, you're living through, as we all are, some economic uncertainties. China's really interesting right now. China's GDP is growing at only 6.6%. It was double-digit, and that was pulling through a lot of the other global economies, just as the US economy pulls through, again, the Western and developing economies. But the slowdown occurring. The powerhouse in Europe, along with the UK, of course, is Germany. Germany's economy is slowing down too. So we're seeing some economic uncertainty and slowdown in global and European markets. The expectation, and you know this, the expectation from the citizen in terms of public service delivery is rising. And we've got demands in terms of central UK government, in terms of the expectation from the citizens. What do we do about that? How do we respond to that? Really, really important. We've also got an aging population. Certainly in the UK, probably here, I would imagine. And that's stretching the way we have to deliver healthcare, welfare, and other public services. I'm going to come back to that because geospatial has a role in addressing some of those issues. The pace of technology change is incredible. I'm an old man now. I've been in business for 35, 36 years. And the change and pace of technological change is just unimaginable. And Jack, 50 years in Esri, has done a great job keeping pace with that technological change. But the divide that's occurring, certainly within the UK, we call it the social divide, because technology is not being landed in all demographic areas. So some people are being left behind in terms of technology, and we call it the social divide. I'm going to come back to that one as well. Environmental challenges is a key part of the UK's Geospatial Commission. We're experiencing pretty dramatic weather here and in the US this week. It's even staying in the UK. And the UK is grinding to a halt because we've had half an inch of snow this week. We're not very well catered in terms of coping with snow. But I think the point about environmental sustainability is the variations in terms of weather and climate. And that's all based on having up-to-date geospatial information. And our little local difficulty right now, and I normally get away with not mentioning the B word, but Brexit. Brexit is paramount in terms of UK policy right now. I'm across here with my colleague Tim, and we were trying to work out what happened yesterday in Parliament. There were 7, 8 different votes around options for Brexit, and we can't work it out. And again, don't stream that back to my colleagues, but it is extremely confusing in terms of Brexit. So, challenges and opportunities that we see from the UK. I remain optimistic. all of us are living on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution 4.0. This gives us a great opportunity to put data and digital at the heart of addressing these kind of problems. The first revolution was steam, then electric, the computer age. Ubiquitous connectivity driving the digital economy is now what we're all engaged with. And furthermore, in the UK, this is the geospatial moment. What a great time to be leading the Geospatial Commission in the UK. We are a manifesto commitment. We are a commitment from the UK government to unlock the value from all of the production and data sets of geospatial information in the UK. We've got the backing of the Prime Minister's office to do this. And indeed, last April, we were assigned £80 million in budget to execute on the policies and objectives I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. So we have the full weight of the UK government in front and behind us. We have funding, and we're building the team and the policies right now. And all of this is leading to addressing some of those issues and challenges. Firstly, building a smarter nation so we can close the technological and social divide and create a smarter government where you're all operating. And that's a big focus for us in terms of deploying geospatial across all of UK government to drive a smarter government. More of that later. The geospatial moment. That's the main takeaway for this morning. And so why are we here, and how have we been constructed in terms of our position with the UK government? And I think what's fairly unique when I talk to similar geospatial entities around the world is we are at the heart of government. As Jack kindly said in his intro, I'm a director in the Cabinet Office, and I'm not sure of the equivalent in the US government, but the Cabinet Office's role is to drive good governance, to drive policy and execution of policy across all of the government departments who I've listed up here, and the audience may well see your equivalent department. So we drive policy and the execution of policy across all of government. So this is a great place for us to be as a Geospatial Commission, because we can reach into each department in terms of their needs and requirements for geospatial, and we can help drive the digitization and the smarter workings of each and every department, be it farming, agriculture, healthcare. We work very closely with our Ministry of Defence. It was great hearing the other day from a couple of senior folks at a breakfast meeting who were driving US defense intelligence. And I work with my equivalents in the Ministry of Defence in terms of ensuring geospatial intelligence maps against the requirements of our defence capability. So we're working with each and every UK government department. And the other great part about my job in terms of driving the UK national geospatial strategy is we now have oversight for the producers of geospatial data across the whole of the United Kingdom. And again, you might recognize some of these entities. I hope so. Ordnance Survey, delivering topographical data, digital land data. They're 227 years old this year, so they've been around. I think they were created to help fight the Napoleonic Wars. That's a long time ago. You may recognize BGS. You have a fantastic equivalent organization here. So subterranean data comes from BGS. And the Coal Authority, roughly 80% of the UK is built on a mine shaft, which is quite a statistic and quite worrying, actually, because that leads to a lot of subsidence. So the Coal Authority is dealing with the legacy issues from our long history of mining coal. We don't mine coal anymore, by the way. We also treat billions of litres of water every year that were contaminated through waste products in the coal industry. UK Hydrographic Office, marine information, providing marine geospatial intelligent information, again, to our Ministry of Defence. So we have oversight for the geospatial policies and strategies for the production of geospatial data and information. It's a great place for us to be as the Commission. And more than that, as I said, is that there's a very strong digital thread running throughout the UK government, digitizing the way we do work, both for our citizens and within government. And I was struck by what Jack said yesterday in terms of the power of geospatial being aligned with workflow. And he also mentioned I was an ex-management consultant many years ago, and that's exactly what we were doing many years ago. We were taking IT systems, aligning it with business processes to drive the optimization of workflow. And geospatial has a huge role to play in that. And I won't go through the whole list of exactly what we're doing in government, but you can see we're spending some serious money in terms of driving infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and in driving productivity gains through data, digital, and geospatial. There's also a big internal entity within UK government called the Government Digital Service. And again, I don't know the equivalent here, but their job is to create smarter government. Again, working with my team to drive and deploy geospatial around the data sets that link the citizen, and the census was a great example, to government policy. So we were working with all of these departments to drive the outward-looking digital economy and the internal-facing way we can be a smarter government. This is one of my sort of 6 or 7 challenges on the first slide. And again, I could spend half an hour just talking about both the productivity gap and the opportunity. The red line you can see is the UK's performance in terms of productivity. And why does this matter? Well, it matters because it affects GDP. GDP is the measure of, if you like, wealth and contribution from each of us in the workforce. So GDP per head is a significant measure in terms of the wealth of a nation. And since the 2008 banking crash and recession, the UK's flatlined. Now, the flip side of that is we have the most people in work, we have the lowest levels of unemployment in the UK, and some of that is enabled by better workflow and better technology. But we have to fix the productivity gap. If we could pick up our productivity rate in line with the rest of Europe, we would add a third to the GDP of the UK. The GDP of the UK is £2 trillion, so we could be adding 500 billion to 600 billion if we could drive better productivity. And digital connectivity, closing the technology divide, will begin to do that. So that's one of our big focus areas and big challenges in terms of the Commission. So let's get to the heart of it. I was talking to Jack last night about the governance and the framework and the way we will act as a commission. And he rightly said I've had 35 years in the private sector. We have teeth. We have teeth within the commission to drive change. And again, I've been struck by listening from the audience about how is change affected, culture and leadership. It's about giving clarity to purpose. And these are the, if I go back, I'm getting 2 different pictures. There we are. We have a number of different goals and objectives in terms of acting as the intelligent customer. And that phrase is very important. It took us 6 months to actually frame the way we would act. I talked about the 6 partner bodies. We sit at the heart of government. We will drive the production of geospatial data, acting to bridge the user needs in the private and public sector and the needs in the public sector. So we will be coordinating the use cases and the production. We spent in parallel about 6 to 9 months looking at, well, how do we optimize value through better production and better usage of geospatial information? And I always get a little bit nervous about putting numbers out there, but this is a really good marker, and every time I speak in the UK, I quote these numbers. We have done analysis that shows up to 11 billion per annum of economic value add by better usage of geospatial data information. That's largely derived from reducing friction in the system, optimizing the workflow, reducing friction, and taking away some of the barriers in terms of the interoperability and discoverability of the geospatial data sets. We've already done additional work since I started in April, and we have a roadmap that gets us to 6 billion within 8 to 10 years. I think that's conservative. I think we can do much more than that. I'm not telling my ministers yet, because they'll be all over us to do more and do it more quickly. And in terms of where that value is derived, these are the kind of vertical markets in the private sector that we're going after. Infrastructure and construction delivers about 4.6 to 5 billion of value add if we can, as I say, take away some of the friction in the system. Mobility is basically transportation. We're heading towards autonomous vehicles, but just fixing our road networks and our train systems in the UK would be a start. And we're working very closely with our friends in the Department for Transport in terms of enhancing mobility of goods, services, and people. Natural resources is hugely important for the UK, forestry, farming, and the such like. So 5 or 6 vertical markets that we are now beginning to explore in terms of use cases, scalable projects to deliver economic value add. We're also, of course, looking to enhance public service. I have, in fact, 3 major key goals: environmental value add, social value add, and economic value add. And these are the kind of areas that, again, we're building projects and programs with colleagues in other government departments to drive the public service expectation. And again, a lot of these were mentioned, which is good to see, by the Esri presentations yesterday. Jack talked a lot about enhancing emergency services, the transport networks I've talked about. Housing and planning is a huge issue in the UK. We're not as big as the US in terms of geography. We're getting to a very high level of population density in certain areas. So having a very quick and agile housing planning sector is really important. We want to go from about 90 days in terms of property conveyancing to hours. And that will come about by digitizing the workflow around that sub-process. So we're looking at specific projects that will enhance these kinds of public services. And here's another live use case we're looking at. I talked about infrastructure and construction delivering almost half of the potential economic value add, 4.6 billion. We spend about 500 million per annum through strikes, fixing strikes. I don't know how it works in the US, but if I'm BT, which is the Verizon AT&T equivalent, I want to lay fiber, I need to dig up the road. I don't know what's under the road because we don't have a common register of underground assets. I'm sure you do here, right? I'm sure you do here. Yeah, I thought so. I thought so. So we're going after this as a first project. So wouldn't it be great if we could share information on the utilities, on gas, on electricity, on telecoms, so we can, again, speed up the planning process to deliver services either to a business or to a consumer more effectively and more quickly? And wouldn't it be great if we could sweep away the $500 million it's costing the taxpayer in repairing roads, mains, electric cables, and so on through strikes? So I'm hoping to get this project and program cleared through Treasury. It's quite a major business case to get this off the ground. And I'm hoping by the spring, this will be our first major project and program. Okay, we have goals. As I said, we're a manifesto commitment. I report up into effectively the Deputy Prime Minister in the Cabinet Office and the Permanent Secretary, who's the Chief Exec of the Civil Service. So, you know, it's great being a manifesto commitment. That comes with a focus. And we have, as you can see, a number of very specific goals and objectives. All easy to say and much harder to do. Again, in the conference yesterday, we heard a lot about the first bullet point. Improving interoperability, improving discoverability, improving awareness of geospatial data. I mean, I'm staggered when I go talk to, I won't name a department, but a number of departments, and they're not aware of what they can leverage from the geospatial data we already have, let alone the data we might like to have. So a big part of what we're doing is joining up the dots in terms of the production and the user communities. we have a role to play in terms of accelerating and stimulating innovation. The geospatial tech market is roughly worth $300 billion per annum, growing at 14%. It's a big market. So we will be intervening and helping to stimulate and accelerate UK-based technology companies. Could be in drones, could be in AV, we'll see. We already have some great Geovation in London. It's a combination of Land Registry and Ordnance Survey, and they've created a hub and an incubation model to stimulate innovation. I'm looking to scale that around the UK. We're launching a future tech review right now. So I'm going to come back to our strategy, but we're going to have a view of a 5-year national geospatial strategy. I want to take a view 5 years beyond that in terms of what the technology landscape could look like so that I can more effectively, with others, intervene in the innovation marketplace. So technology is a key remit, and Jack, I know, has a very strong point of view about technology, of course. When we went out to talk to the wide community 6 months ago, we did a call for evidence. We consulted both with the private sector and the public sector, big companies, small companies. What things would you like us to fix? Probably the one that came back the loudest was skills. Skills, capabilities, competencies. And we're working with existing academia, existing universities. We're working with groups and associations to identify what base skills we have in the UK around geospatial, what do we need 5, 10 years out, and how do we close the skills gap. Really exciting piece of work that we'll be doing in parallel with all of these other activities. So what have we done so far? I mean, as I said, it's been a long 9 months. It's been a hugely exciting 9 months. You know, I spent a lot of time building the team. I've been trying to spend some of that 80 million. It's amazing how hard it is to spend 80 million. I'm joking, but you know, we are spending some of the money already. But we've done a number of things. If you look at the grainy photograph on the left, that is the equivalent of US geospatial leaders walking in through the front door of the White House. You know, that was a quite unique moment for us. You know, we were hosted by the senior advisors of the Prime Minister last October. For those Esri colleagues, there's a silver-haired gentleman at the back who is Charles Conley, who works for Esri. So Esri UK participated in the breakfast meeting with the Prime Minister's representatives and the Secretary of State for the digital department. And I'm in there somewhere with a couple of my team. So we've done a number of things. One of the big policy announcements we launched last summer was to open up more of the Ordnance Survey master map data sets. That's hugely important in terms of our first step along the journey in terms of that manifesto commitment to unlock and realize more value. And we're now working on that with Ordnance Survey in terms of realizing the value that will come from doing that. I mentioned the call for evidence. That feeds into our annual plan that we'll publish this spring. And again, that's going to be a very landmark document that we're very happy to share with you all here in the US. We've launched some projects, as I've said. The next really critical part of the journey is the 5-year strategy this coming autumn. And that will really anchor both the goals and objectives that we're looking to achieve in the next 5 years, as well as the policy statements that we're working on right now. What needs to change? What policies do we need to enact? What do we need to put in place to support the UK being a global world leader in geospatial? So a lot to do in the next few months. I'm just coming towards the end now. You know, I've got many questions and many opportunities and many challenges, as we all do in this sector. But you know, some of the things on my mind are getting to how do we arrive at a single source of geospatial data and geospatial truth. You know, I mentioned the underground assets. There isn't a single source of truth in terms of underground assets, and that's just one example. So I'm very keen to find a way in terms of policy creation and then execution to get to that single source of truth. You know, Jack talked about this yesterday, 2 things.
a collaborative geospatial infrastructure, and again, he and I talked about this last night. Hubs, portals, platforms. How do we bring that single source of truth together to ensure the highest level of quality of data that all users can access freely? What is the architecture that will deliver that? That's a big, big question for us. Do email me any thoughts and suggestions on that. And then thirdly, geospatial at scale. Really, really important. How do we leverage, how do we get to 11 billion of value? How do we get to optimizing public services? That can only be done by scaling innovation, technology, processes, and architectures. We have some levers, which is great. Being at the heart of government, being part of government, there are some levers I can deploy to execute on those goals and objectives. We can legislate. We will think about that. We will think about, do we need to mandate and legislate to achieve those goals? We have existing regulators in most of the vertical markets, water, gas, electric, etc. So we can use the existing regulatory framework to drive change. As the intelligent customer, I can bridge both in, the user requirements and the production requirements. So we have power, and we can bridge both sides of the coin. It will come down to leadership. And again, the great thing about where we're positioned in government is that, I have access to the Deputy Prime Minister and senior ministers, so we can get things done. And we already have funds, as you've seen. We are making a pitch to our Treasury for more funds as we build out the program to achieve the 11 billion and the optimization of public services. So we have a number of levers that we will depress and press hard on in the coming months and year or two. So in conclusion, we're here to learn and share. I've been to, as Jack mentioned, China. We were at the UN Global Geospatial Congress. I talked to a dozen countries there. We've been to Singapore. We talked to Singapore a lot. We're here to learn and share examples of what we're doing. So I do want to find a channel of communication between the audience here and what we're doing. We're here to define and design policy, as I've said. We're in a great position, a unique position to be able to define geospatial strategy and policy, and it's all about delivering. My team will be measured on delivering value. Public value, environmental value, and economic value. So we have, as you've seen, hopefully, political commitment. We've got a degree of momentum, and I've built a team of 40 to 50 supporting the Commission, and just last month we announced the appointment of the chair of the Commission, who's a market-leading economist. So we're building a really good and experienced team. Now, as you've probably gathered from the accent on my Brit, and the Brits tend to be buttoned up. I've been buttoned up all morning. I'm going to unbutton. We're really excited. I mean, seriously, you've got to be passionate about this. Jack's been doing this 50 years. You've been doing it for a long time, presumably individually. I've had the privilege of doing this for 9 months. I'm hugely excited. I'm hugely passionate about the opportunities. This is the geospatial moment, I believe, not only for the UK, but for all of us in this room as well. So thanks for listening.
Well, that's great.